Hello Linux fans, Rob here and welcome to Linux Quest, and I am so stoked for this video today. I hold in my hands a ThinkPad Carbon X1 Ultrabook, which is the finest laptop hardware I have ever owned, and it was possible through a good friend, Wes, so big shout out to Wes for striking a good bargain on this that Linux Quest could afford. This is the 6th Gen 2018 version, but this is the high-end version. This has LTE, SD card reader, the Intel Core i7 processor, 16 gigs of RAM with a super high-speed Samsung SSD drive. So needless to say, this bad boy's got Linux on it. I want to just point out a couple of things, not that it's turned on here, but we're going to go in and take a look at the latest Manjaro 19 with the Gnome or Gnome, take your pick, desktop environment running here, which scaled perfect on this incredibly gorgeous 4K screen. This screen blows away any other laptop I've ever personally owned or looked at in a store anywhere. I'm going to put it on par with anything Samsung offers or the highest end Dell for that matter. This is not the touchscreen, this is the full 4K with color and brightness. The brightness I think is at 500 nits that just makes this thing incredibly nice to look at. Also you get the famous ThinkPad keyboard with the little red nub here as well as clickers above the trackpad. The trackpad is awesome. This thing weighs 2.5 pounds. It feels lighter and more balanced than my Samsung Galaxy Tab S tablet with the keyboard cover and everything on it. It feels just as light but more balanced than that. So, alright, well, we're going to jump over. Oh, one other thing too. Let's go ahead and cover the ports. So you've got USB on this side with fan ports. Here you've got two USB ports, high-speed ports, as well as a full HDMI. I don't know if you can see that on the video or not. And then the other cool thing, which I didn't give much thought to, but now that I've got it, you charge with USB-C, which is fantastic because my phone and tablet and virtually everything else that I've got that charges these days uses USB. So here we have Manjaro 19 with the Gnome desktop set up and installed. And again, the scaling right out of the box just worked great. So we're going to jump over here to settings and we'll take a quick look at what the default setup was. So the resolution here is 2560 by 1440, 16:9 aspect ratio. And by default, it was scaled to 200%, which for my eyes, which aren't getting any younger, it's perfect. The clarity is there, it's crisp, the fonts look fantastic. And that's one of the main reasons, quite frankly, I decided to go with the Gnome desktop here. To my eyes, everything looks sharp and crisp. The colors are vibrant. Again, the display on this, you won't be able to tell on the video. You'd need to be here in front of it looking at this monitor. It's absolutely gorgeous. And as far as speed and everything with the specs of this hardware, obviously it runs great. Normally, the Gnome desktop is not my choice. Typically, if I'm going to run Manjaro, I go with their default desktop, which is XFCE. And they do as good a job or better than anybody really at theming and making XFCE look modern and cohesive throughout the OS. So normally I go with that, but I just was not sure how XFCE would handle high DPI, high resolution 4K parameters of this particular monitor. So just a couple of quick things to talk about with Manjaro 19 pertaining primarily to the Gnome desktop. You will get Gnome tweaks set up by default, which gives you dash to dock settings. And I've always liked that about the Gnome version of Manjaro because you don't have to spend a lot of time installing things. So if you loaded up Ubuntu, for example, you would have to install the Gnome settings. Not that it's incredibly difficult to do, but this just saves you some steps. I, for one, prefer the dock here on the bottom, and so with dash to dock settings, you can position that. This is actual settings for dash to dock. That's not what I meant to go launch into there, but let's go back over to settings. I've created folders, which is one of the nice things you can do within the Gnome desktop now. Having this pre-installed gives you some options for animation, things like that. Normally I turn animations off. Being that this is a laptop, we're going to leave suspend when the laptop lid is closed turned on. If we go over here to appearance, you can go in and change your themes, everything from application themes, cursor, icon, shell, sound, so on and so forth, as well as your background image and things like that. And then you have extensions, which you can add within Gnome Tweaks. And here we talked about dash to dock, but you've also got several other extensions built in, such as arc menu, applications menu, dash to panel if you wanted a full panel for a more traditional desktop look, desktop icons, G-Connect. So that's like KDE Connect for the Gnome desktop, and lots of other extensions already set up for you. So kudos to the Manjaro team for having this set up ready to go for people who love to tweak their system. Then you also have font control, where you could go in and change your individual fonts. Everything from the interface, being the GUI portion, what you're going to see and interact with, to document text, monospace text, and window titles. And here, again, left everything default. The hinting's at slight. You've got subpixel for the LCD screens, and a scaling factor of 1 here. So didn't have to make any changes, and it just, hopefully this shows up in the video. Keyboard and mouse settings, startup applications, top bar settings, window title bars, window adjustments here. So edge tiling, center new windows, things like, actually I'm going to turn that on, center new windows. Resize with secondary click, and then you can set up various workspaces if that's what you use for your daily task, if you like multiple desktops, things like that, dynamic workspaces. So having tweaks all set up and ready to go is a big plus, especially if you're someone new. Maybe you're experimenting with Linux and you're not sure what everything is. I mean, even I get confused here. I don't know if I actually called it what it is, which is Gnome Tweaks to begin with. You can create folders within the Gnome desktop here. You just simply drag. So if I wanted to add Steam here over to this folder, I could click and drag and drop. And it's just as easy as that. And that kind of keeps things organized a little bit. There's lots of other options for setting up. You don't have to have this full screen menu in place. You could actually get within the Gnome desktop a more traditional cascading menu, if you will. And I've got videos on that, and there's tons of other Linux YouTubers that go through and break down the Gnome desktop. As far as Manjaro itself, again, speaking to someone who maybe is not familiar with the different distros and what makes them, one different from another, what you get within Manjaro is it is Arch-based. So you are able to use a operating system that will self-update. It's what we call a rolling release. And so as packages are approved and checked out and updated through the OS, you'll get those updates as time passes. It's not as if you'll get a monthly 6-month cycle release and you just have to wait for the newest packages. They roll out as they are approved to be safe for use and that kind of thing, and stable. They'll just roll out with the system. So in that way, you've always got a current, up-to-date system. Now, some people will argue there that, well, you're taking a chance on breaking something, and there is a chance. But in my experience, Manjaro is one of those operating systems that does an extremely good job vetting things before they roll them out for the updates. Also with Manjaro, you can get a multitude of desktops. They have community versions where you can get desktops that are not within their standard lineup, such as KDE. That's one of their standards. XFCE is more of their default, their focus on their mainline distro. And then you see here the Gnome desktop. The other thing that's nice about Manjaro, because it is Arch-based, is you will find the AUR, which is the Arch User Repository. And what that does is open you up to a huge list of software or packages. And we're going to go into preferences here. And I've shown this a million times, but while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and show it again. Maybe there's one new person who's like, what are you talking about? And so you can turn on the AUR. And that just really opens up outside of the normal software manager that you see loaded here in the background. This opens up a huge world of software where you can find packages, or slash programs to install from the AUR. And there, people will argue that that's not a safe way to do it. I, for one, have never had an issue installing anything from the AUR. The only thing I do run into occasionally is that a package from the AUR will fail to build. And building that package is something that happens in the background. You're not having to code it yourself or anything like that. You simply click that you want that package and you click apply and it'll start the building process. So without getting any deeper than that, just kind of wanted to show off what the settings were for the display here. And of course, Manjaro is a terrific OS choice. And these are just some of the key things here with the AUR, with their package management, with the ability to get multiple desktops, and the rolling release format that is vetted by the Manjaro team, make Manjaro just a well-rounded, very fun to use operating system.